¿Qué tal todos? Bienvenidos a un nuevo podcast de Chasing Alpha. El día de hoy estamos muy emocionados. Está con nosotros uno de los coaches de Black Card. En lo personal fue uno de mis coaches. Yo tuve la oportunidad de picharle a Tom. Mr. Tom COBIN, welcome to Guatemala. We're really happy to have you here and really honored for everything you're bringing to our audience, all the education you've given us. Really grateful for Black Card. So he's the winner of an Emmy Award. He is also a coach for public speaking with the Impact system. Mm-hmm. So please introduce yourself.
Hi,
welcome.
I'm thrilled to be here. We was just saying before the camera started rolling how interesting an experience this is for me. To be down here in Central America in an environment where, as a news producer in New York City 40 years ago, I would write and produce stories about the political and the military things going on in countries like Guatemala. And to now be here 40 years later, seeing the incredible things that have been done, the wonderful things that you're doing to try and bring investment capital into Guatemala, and the results, that really life-changing stuff. I am just so thrilled and humbled to be even a small part of it. So kudos to you guys, what you're trying to do in this conference this week that you've given me the opportunity to appear at. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. And with us, Santiago and Oscar, which you already know. And we're just thrilled to have people like you here in Guatemala, bringing in all your knowledge,
your expertise, your experience. Personally, to me, Tom is not only a friend, but a great coach. A great coach. He actually, because our audience might not know, he actually helped me to frame my mission, my life mission statement. So yeah, no, it's we were discussing yesterday the power of one word.
Yes.
Huh?
Yeah.
And it's amazing what one word.
What is your life mission statement? Because you're already
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Come on, man. My life mission statement is to increase the fortune of my surroundings and to increase the surroundings to the extent of my life.
And this conversation came up. Paul, I'm fascinated with languages. I don't consider myself fluent in Spanish, but I study. And it was about the word suerte.
Suerte, yes.
Which normally means luck. And luck feels kind of random, something that's external to you, that happens to you, almost like you're a victim of it, or you're reacting to it. But the word fortune is a little bit stronger, and you can take more, because you can make a fortune. Yes. You can create your own fortune. And it was a random conversation, but it's so wonderful to hear the meaning that has for you, because yes, words matter. I consider myself a wordsmith. I spent 20 years in pharmaceutical sales. I used to be a national sales trainer for the fourth largest pharmaceutical company in the world. And I would encourage bringing reps in from the field so they can see the 45-minute conversation that we would have over the placement of one word. And of course, you had regulatory and compliance things to consider, but especially to me, with the history of being a journalist and understanding how words matter, that was a whole nother aspect to show people how important it is to choose your words carefully, to be very judicious about not only what you say, but how you say it. And what I actually just did is a technique that you can use to soften your voice. That can even be sometimes more emphatic. I demonstrate that. I have a TEDx talk called Music as a Model for Public Speaking. And you can search it on YouTube. Mm-hmm. And in there, I demonstrate all of the things that I've been a musician for 50 years, since I was 12 years old playing guitar. And over the years, I've realized how much musicality plays into the ability of being an effective speaker. There's the lyrics to a song. Well, that's the script to your speech or your presentation. There's the music video, which becomes your pitch deck, right? There's the rhythm, the pacing, the speed. Sometimes you need to slow down. And I see newscasters all the time. They must think the more that they jam into that, 30 seconds or whatever. No, that's not necessarily all going to get through. It's not about how much you say. It's about how much you hear. And sometimes your brain needs time to process that. There's power in pausing. I like to say sometimes the most effective thing that you can do when you're speaking is not to speak.
The power of silence.
Yes. And especially in two-way conversations, listening is so critical. We talk about that all the time in the investment capital world where we're working, right? To know your customer, to understand what their interest is, to really actively listen, and then be judicious about how you present your fund offering for different interests of different potential investors. Same thing I would have to do in pharmaceutical sales. I would have to take an element of my product and then match that with what the prescribing physician was concerned about. There are some who just want efficacy. There are some who are primarily concerned about safety. Others, it's cost. Others, it's make it easy for my office so we don't struggle with these prior authorizations. So whatever aspect of your drug you can present to them to match their need, it's all about providing for the needs of others. And that's how you can most effectively communicate. It's not necessarily what you want to say, it's what somebody else needs to hear.
You mentioned the listening part. You know, you need to hear, you need to listen, you need to pay attention. And it just reminded me of a story that I heard, that different cultures speak at different rhythms, just pointing out the musicality of it. And the way that we Latins, we don't wait for the other person to end his phrase. We already have a reply in the tongue. And the Germans, they speak in a rhythm that they allow the other person to talk and then immediately reply. And then they place the example of the Japanese, and it caught my eye in the sense that they talk, they pause, and then the other part talks back, and that's the way to have a conversation. And yes, the power of silence, it's amazing what you can do, and the importance of speaking correctly.
It's interesting. You remind me of a conversation that I had with a pharmaceutical rep. We were just talking on the phone. And in the middle of the conversation, she said that she noticed something that I do that most other people don't do, which is to pause and listen when the other person starts talking.
Yeah.
She's like, people talk over each other all the time, but she says, I notice what you do is as soon as I start talking, you immediately stop. Because I think I've been trained as a journalist to really listen to the interviewer, right? And that's how you pick up, that's how you'll get your crazy soundbite, because you heard something and then you followed up on it. And that's where you get your exclusive that nobody else got because you were listening. There's a saying, listen to learn, not to respond. But that's difficult because our brains are trained. It's just like autocomplete in your browser. In your internet browser, it will automatically complete what it thinks you're going to ask. Sometimes it's right, a few times it's wrong. That's what our brains do. Our brains are constantly trying to predict the next thing that somebody says, and sometimes it goes off the rail. And you're completely misunderstanding what they're meaning, and it leads to a lot of problems in communication. So it is a discipline that you have to train yourself to do.
And many salespeople think that the more they speak, the better they're going to sell. And that's not the case. You have to listen in order to sell.
We have a saying for that. Show up and throw up.
So we also say here that you have 2 ears and one mouth, right? So that's for something. For me, the power of communication. I'm a lawyer. Is very important. I myself have perceived as a personal defect that I speak too fast, and that conveys a lot in how you can relay your message to your counterpart. And I was trained to say as less possible and listen the most possible, so you can exactly catch that. And I think. You were talking about being a salesman, and I think everybody is a salesman. Everything is for sale. And the power of a correct communication is the key to almost obtaining anything. Everything you do or say is a type of sale.
It's a form of influence. I call it impact. And in fact, do we have time for very quickly to go through?
We have time.
We have all the time in the world for you.
The model for my speaking approach is impact. And that stands for different things. IMPACT. And I play a little bit, I take a little bit of a poetic license here. The letter I stands for eye contact. And we are trained to respond to each other's facial expressions. Before we speak, we have the development of a system called mirror neurons. It's why you smile at a baby and they smile back. So that is very early on in the neurogenesis of the human brain. We're trained to respond to facial recognition. And there's a condition called alexithymia where people can't do that. And they have extreme social dysfunction. People think like they're disconnected. They don't get each other. So that's what I is for. M is for movement. Move your hands, move your face, move your body through your space. Move your voice throughout its range. Just don't make it sound too strange. So that's all the types of movement, dynamics. My company is called Dynamic Coach because it's all about dynamics. The brain craves novelty. It wants to hear something new. So if you change your pitch, if you change your gestures, you're giving new stimuli to draw attention. P is for pacing and pausing. And that functions in two different ways. You can create anticipation for the next thing you're going to say because the brain is looking for that next signal. So when you pause, it makes people lean in. Oh, what's he going to say next? And then after you say something, you can pause afterwards to allow the brain to process. Like you're doing right now. And that's where the brain decides, is this important enough to store on the hard drive of my long-term memory? But if you're just blasting out, the brain's like, oh, let me hear this, let me hear that, let me hear, and there's no time to process and retain. So that's the importance of pausing. A is for authenticity, as Oscar Wilde is famous for saying, just be yourself, everybody else is already taken. C is for confidence, and I have a very pragmatic step-by-step process of building confidence. It involves making sure that you're ready, but also visualizing success beforehand and remembering success afterwards so that you can kind of deal with that fear of failure. And then T is for telling stories. Throughout history, story is how we maintained our cultures and our values and the story of our history before there was the written word. And there's very specific techniques that you can use in choosing what stories to tell and how you lay the characters and the plot and the suspense and the driver and the emotion. People learn through the stories that you tell. So that's IMPACT. And there's a little bit of this on my website, a little description of this, so you can refer to that, dynamiccoach.com. Mm-hmm. And, as part of my program, when you come on as a coaching client, I have an ebook that summarizes this and goes into a little bit more detail, offers the citation for the research if you want to dig deeper. But I'm a science geek. Mm-hmm. I dropped out of Cornell pre-med before I decided to get into journalism. So it was cool that 30 years later, I wound back in the medical science, speaking to people who actually were doctors like I thought I might be one day. But that's been my approach. I want my approach to be evidence-based. It's not just Tom's thoughts. Even I almost consider myself a journalist, a collector of scientific information, and that then I can convey it to help other people communicate better, to have impact on their world, on their loved ones, on their surroundings, on history.
And how is this important for a fund manager? And how do you apply it to Black Cards?
What you guys are looking for, one of the most difficult behavioral changes that anyone could ask for. You're asking people to trust you with millions of dollars. Yeah. Sometimes family inheritance that goes back generations. Why are they going to do that? You've got to give them a pretty compelling reason. Mm-hmm. That's the impact that you want to have so that you can have impact by how you will leverage their money to make profits for them, big profits for you, and serve some kind of need in the world. And you have to communicate that to the investor in a way that helps them understand what your model is, why it's good for them, how they will make money, and why they should trust you. How you're going to mitigate the risk, how you're going to provide their returns, how much time they have to have locked up with you, when can they get out, what should they expect?
Yeah. I remember when you changed my whole pitch and I had to redo it all over again.
Hopefully better.
Yeah. I think so, because I have taken on quite an investment already. But I have you to thank you for it, because you restructured the whole pitch and you told me, hey, slow down. I remember that. That lesson. Yeah.
I think we are very grateful to have you here. Your participation is very important for us, and communication is the key of what we are searching for in this podcast, right? To get our message through, and I think we do need a lot of coaching on those areas to relay that confidence, that trust that you're talking about. And I see it's a fundamental part of a trust, like Frederick was saying. I feel not confident enough to be a salesman, right? And it's something that everybody has to work on. Yeah. And relaying the perfect and the concrete message to your target audience is key.
And it's always in flux. It's always under development. It's always wet cement. You know, you've got to listen and get the feedback. Did that land? Did that not? You know, pressure test your approach. Did people respond? If you're not getting the investment, why not? Maybe it's part of the model. Maybe it's just how you're conveying it. You know, if I did not convince a doctor to write my prescription medication, why not? What else didn't I say? So you've got to constantly be self-coaching and pressure testing and seeing what works and what doesn't. And don't get too attached to anything. We have sometimes an ego attachment to like, no, this is how I do it. It's got to work. It's got to work. I just got to keep doing it better. Maybe doing it differently is the solution.
It grabs my attention that we talk every day to everybody. This is the way that we communicate to everybody. And how little people actually study how to talk. And it's something that we ought to train every day at every given opportunity, just to be better at it. And the importance that it has to speak correctly, choose your words carefully, to get the message across, to inspire trust, to all this, and de lo que Tom nos está compartiendo hoy, la importancia de escoger correctamente las palabras, su método impact, el orden que tiene para poder hablar bien. Todos hablamos todos los días, y lo poco que estudiamos para hablar. Y ese es el trabajo de Tom. It's priceless. Having you as a coach here. Tener a Tom aquí es un privilegio.
And I'll tell you what also was priceless. My parents. 12 years old, they put both my brother and me into public speaking in the 7th grade. They knew how important this skill was going to be for the rest of our lives. So I encourage all people of all ages to seek out help. Join a Toastmasters chapter. They are all around the world. And then if you really need to upskill your game, engage a coach.
You know, something funny about me? I always told my parents that I was never going to be into sales. Whatever, but not sales. And I was 19 years old. I'm a really shy guy. I don't like people. I'm not a people person like Santiago. You are a people person. I'm not.
I disagree. But
I disagree too.
I'm really shy, and I don't like public speaking. And I was 19 or 20 years old. I used to work for DHL, and they trained me to listen. And I was the shyest one of the whole sales force, and I became the best salesman because of my people skills. I tend to listen a lot, so I am really good at identifying the needs of the people and then just making a match with the product.
Right. It's exactly what sales is, matching the product with the need. And you don't know what the need is unless you're listening to the customer.
But the really important thing is that you don't have to be a people's person like Santiago. You can just be shy like Coca and myself. More,
if this is your standard for shyness, we need to review the concepts, my friend.
No, I consider myself a shy person, and the most important word in your impact strategy is confidence. Because even though I know what I'm about to start to talk about, and I know what I'm gonna say, that little moment before you take the mic, you're like, oh, what am I gonna say? Is it gonna work? Am I gonna get it through correctly?
Just take a deep breath. You've heard this all your life. Just take a deep breath. There's science behind that. The first neurotransmitter ever discovered was found by a German scientist who called it Wegestoff. Wegestoff. What he discovered was the oxygenation, the process of getting oxygen into and carbon dioxide out of the vagus nerve. It's called vagus because it's the same word root as vagabond, wanderer. Well, the vagus nerve, it's almost like a second brain, and it wanders throughout your entire body. When you take deep abdominal breaths, you oxygenate the vagus nerve. It secretes this neurotransmitter, which we have now named acetylcholine, and it's the body's internal natural tranquilizer. You can literally calm yourself. This is a trick. And you're saying about not a people person, shy people. Many public speakers are actually introverts. It's a common misconception. People think, oh, you get out there and you're on. No, they can be very shy, and getting on stage and being the one who commands attention gives them control.
No?
And then some of them just head straight to the exit. Like they don't want that post-speech interaction. But if you get that anxiety, we do it all the time. That's another benefit of pausing. Take that deep breath. And it also helps you stop, using those those filler words, right? Because that's why people, they think about fill all the space and they can't have everyone, so they fill all the silly stuff.
It's very valuable what you're saying. But I told Freddie the other day that I meditate every day. I breathe a lot. And the other day he told me, you have really calmed down. And I think I have. And I attribute it to this. And now what you're saying just aligns perfectly with that. And
I was in a rock band. I was the lead singer. And of course, breath was important, so I understood that. But we had an instructor come in. This is think of Dirty Dancing. It was in a Catskills hotel in the 1970s, the Borscht Belt, upstate New York. And we were the teen band, but we had to stop when the big show with Jerry Lewis or Red Skelton or Buddy Hackett or Don Rickles were in the big showroom. We had to be quiet. So we had people come in. I learned to do the hustle, do the dance, right? But this one guy came in showing us some yoga. And he showed us the deep abdominal breathing, which helped with my singing. And then I got into yoga and meditation, and it's been part of my life ever since. So.
Great. Bueno, Tom, para los que están en nuestra audiencia, es ganador de un premio Emmy y es valiosísimo alguien con esa experiencia acá. Tom, please tell us about your awards, your Emmy awards, and your two.
Sure. Right out of college in New York City, I got a writer and producer job at WCBS TV, the CBS flagship station. And at that time, there were no cameras in the courtroom, which of course we take for granted today. But at that time, it was a big deal. So they decided to have a test case, and our station was what we call now the pool. It was our camera, and then we had to, make copies for all the other TV stations. But it was being scrutinized by the New York State court system about whether this thing was actually a good idea. And it was an infamous case about an abused child who was killed, and a lot of attention, very sensational case. And I was taking the notes every day. Our reporter, I'm going to say her name because she's just amazing, Mary Murphy, one of the best reporters in the history of New York City media. She's now, I guess, semi-retired. But she was the reporter, and I was the producer, and I had to take, detailed notes, know where every soundbite was, so that when the story ultimately came out, it was organized, and we got it on air, and our coverage won the Emmy Award. And what's interesting is because I actually was on a windsurfing vacation in the Keys while they had jury deliberation. And while I was down there, I met the director of a famous beer. I probably don't want to mention names, but famous beer, He was going to cast me in a commercial for this beer. But they were going to shoot on the day that I was scheduled to fly home. So I called the newsroom and I said, hey, I want to stay another day. They're like, no, jury's going to come in. We're sure the jury's going to come in. So I gave up blew my shot to be a famous commercial actor. Came home, sure enough, the jury came in, and the coverage, Mary, was just amazing, and I was named as the producer for that Emmy Award. Fast forward 30 years. I'm a pharmaceutical representative calling on a neurologist in Virginia Beach. And we just got to talking one day over lunch. Oh, you used to be in media? Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Oh, yeah, I was a resident at Bellevue Hospital in New York. Oh, really? Da, 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 da. And he's like, yeah, I remember this one night when, I had to call the security to lock down the emergency room because there was an abuse victim, and we had to call. I was like, Joel Steinberg? He goes, you know that case? I'm like, yeah, I won an award. I won an Emmy Award for that coverage. He was the doctor who locked the emergency room down so the police could come because he suspected that this was a case of abuse.
Oh, great.
And here I am 30 years later calling on that doctor. It's just wild.
Yeah,
strange.
Great story.
Strange circles, the way that your life circles back on you.
And what about your other two awards?
This is a case of making your own break. When I went from behind the scenes as weekend producer of WCBS TV to go out on air, I did it like 10 years late. Usually you do it straight out of college. I waited another 10 years. But I went to a small market in Salisbury, Maryland, Dover, Delaware, and I wanted to be an investigative reporter. But I had an opportunity to do the weekends where the anchor also does the weather. Now, from years of windsurfing, I kind of understood weather. And I asked the news director, I said, would you mind if I got up from the desk and went over to the green screen chroma key like I've seen the best in the business do for 10 years in New York City? I think I could do that. That'd be fun. She's like, hey, you want to do that? Knock yourself out. So I start doing that on the weekend. And then our morning and noon weather guy gets another job. So they say, oh, we'd like you to, we've seen 125 audition tape. We like you. You're better than morning and noon weather. I'm like, no, which part of I want to be an investigative reporter?
Don't you get?
Yeah. So we went back and forth, and they said, we think you could pull it off being an investigative reporter and weathercaster. So I said, you know what? Here's the deal. I will do morning and noon weather if you just leave me alone. In between shows and after the noon show, you let me produce, research, shoot my stories. And in the entire year, I did 2 stories. That's it. 2 multi-part, 3-part investigative series, submitted it to the Radio Television News Directors Association in separate categories. I would later find out by the WCBS TV entertainment correspondent who was on the executive committee, who came to me in the reception for award winners. He said, you're welcome. I said, what? He goes, we had a 45-minute knockdown drag out over you. I'm like, what? Why? What? He goes, they've never given 2 awards in different categories to the same person in the same year, and they didn't want to do it. But he said, well, what was better in this category? Oh, no, definitely. Well, what was better in that category? Well, yeah, that guy. He's like, well, then how can you not give him those awards? Mm-hmm. He won the argument, and I got 2 Edward R. Murrow awards.
Oh, that's a great story.
And we have another great story with Tom. We took him diving. Sí, nos lo llevamos a bucear. Y cuando salimos, fuimos a comer ceviches. Realmente estábamos buscando un lugar de tacos.
Sí, pero...
Y paramos en un lugar de ceviches y tequila. And it's just a great honor to have you here in Guatemala and just to taste our food and take a look around and see our culture. Really, Tom, thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me, and I definitely plan to come back. Unfortunately, I've got to leave a little bit early. I'm going to miss the rest of the wonderful weekend that I know that you have planned for the rest of the Black Card coaches. But you've been incredibly gracious hosts, and I am again thrilled to be supporting you in what you are trying to do for this country and its residents and the investors who have the vision to see the potential in what you guys are doing.
Bueno, pues ese es nuestro podcast. Gracias a todos por verlo. Hay mucho que aprender acá. Les sugiero que lo vean una y otra vez porque Tom fue para mí una gran bendición. Sobre todo, él reestructuró mi pitch para que yo pudiera venderlo y conseguir mi primer $1. Y nos vemos en el próximo podcast.